What's going on, everyone, and welcome into episode 59 of Expected Bets 4. On today's episode, we'll be breaking down a few key matchups for January 4th. We have a 13-game slate, so it's a little much to get to if we try to go through all of them. So we're going to have 7 matchups today. Before we get into that, let's bring in the crew. Betzky, how we doing?
Good. Had a fantastic holiday marathon, whatever you want to call it. I mean, just nonstop seeing friends and family and eating and drinking too much. Just a few.
Just a few. Yeah.
Yeah. So it was fun, though. You know, it's always a good time, but right when you come out of it, it's just like a haze.
Yeah, this week is always rough. Franco, how we doing out there in Philly?
I'm doing all right. Just getting over being sick a little bit. So, you know, getting through this holiday colds, 2 kids and fun stuff like that. So other than that, yeah, Christmas was cool with the kids and, you know, back to work, back to the grind and trying to get back in it, you know, it's tough.
Yeah. The NHL obviously had the Winter Classic, which again, I don't know how many people really knew about that outside kind of people who follow the NHL daily, but just really no promotion. It's insane that they just continue to fail in terms of a marketing perspective. It's unbelievable. It's like them and the MLB just refuse to try to help themselves at all.
So man, yeah, the Winter Classics were so cool when they first came out too.
So cool.
And actually, this was the first one I like really paid attention to for part of the game, at least in a while. And just to see the scenes in Seattle and everything, and having the 2 most recent expansion teams, it was a smart move with some of the teams and whatnot. But man, I couldn't believe it was on at 1 p.m.
Yeah,
for my time, you know, insane. 12. It was 12.
Not ideal.
It was 12 in Seattle. It was noon. Yeah, it's
something else. It really is. All right, I guess we'll get into the first game of the slate here. We have Pittsburgh traveling to Boston here. Boston's the home favorite, -160 in this one. Over under set at 6 here. Boston just continues to be dominant at home. Seems like it's been a trend the past few years. 11-2-3. They are coming off a win against Columbus in their last game, 4-1. They're on a 4-game win streak here. Kind of righted the ship after they had a little downturn heading into the break. So they seem to be back on track. Pittsburgh coming off a loss to Washington. But they've been solid as well. They've kind of righted their ship as well. I know we talked about them a few weeks ago and wondering if they were going to kind of figure things out. And it looks like they have 7-2-1 in their last 10 here. Interesting game here. Obviously, I think Boston kind of takes this one at home here, but I'm curious to hear your thoughts here. I'll start with you, Franco, on this one.
Yeah, tough loss for Pittsburgh the other day. I felt like they didn't show up for the first period and then played a pretty good game after that. They almost completed that comeback against Washington.
Yeah.
So
a few bad bounces in the first two. A few of those goals kind of just Yeah,
it's tough to go down 4-0 like that. It's always hard to come back from. So good resilience from them. I think you can build on that a little bit. So I don't know about side here. I like Boston's power play has been good recently, but Pittsburgh's penalty kill is good. So, you know, no crazy leans there. The 2 things that stuck out to me was Pasta goal. I mean, I feel like he's got good history against everybody. 2 goals in his last 3, 8 goals in 10 against them. Plenty of shot attempts and shots on goal against them as well in the past. So, you know, it's going to be like -110 or something, probably ridiculous, but don't mind that. And I kind of want to get creative here. I think you should be able to, given the matchup, be able to do a Crosby and Gensel point parlay. Typically, they're 1.5 for a point, or you know, their typical prop is going to be 1.5. But I think given the matchup against Boston, you might be able to get them both at a 1-point prop. Parlay them and should be close to even money. Both have been fantastic this year. Recent form looks great as well. Gensel's been having a ton of assists recently as well too. So I really like that a lot. I think the value's there and the history looks good as well. 14 points for Gensel in 14 games against Boston, 12 for 14 games for Crosby. So both very productive. I think that's the way to find value here.
Yeah. Betzky, any looks for you in this one?
Yeah. You know what may be interesting too, if you want to kind of get some extra value out of any of your Pittsburgh props. Boston's allowing like the second most penalties in the league right now, or power play opportunities to their opponents. Their penalty kills kind of dropped, so they are 11th worst in the league, so bottom third in the league. Pittsburgh's getting fully healthy again, so Rust is finally back. Raquel's finally back. Raquel's been really sneaky on both shots and props. Yeah, and he was playing up with Crosby until Russ came back. I believe he's now back with Malkin, but Malkin's always kind of been the line mate with him that he's been with historically since he's gone to Pittsburgh, and they have really nice chemistry. And that line of Riley Smith, Malkin was already kind of hot, and now if you put Raquel there, that's a nice look. So I may lean into that second line too a little bit if you think we're going to get multiple goals from Pittsburgh, and I think that offense is starting to click. Malkin was a little bit better away this season, so I may lean onto the second line a little bit, especially if I can get Raquel point around like minus 120 or so.
Yeah, you mentioned two guys that I had targeted here. So Malkin, obviously at that 2.5 shots on goal mark here. He's hitting 5 of his last 5, and then 3 of his last 3 versus Boston as well. So some pretty good history there, as well as attempts and kind of recent form. Raquel Point also 4 over in 4 of his last 5, and then 2 of his last 4 versus Boston. So decent history. The only look for Boston side I really have is McAvoy Point. He's been pretty solid as of late here, hitting in 4 of his last 5. So those are going to be the guys I look to target in this one tomorrow. But any other looks in this one?
Yeah, I mean, Machard's been so bad on shots. So if you really want to take an under, that may be a decent one to look at. But of course, that's how it goes. You go for the under finally, and they hit. Crosby is another one to just stay away with on shots on goal right now. I think he may have blew his load earlier this season because he was incredible for his shots prop. I mean, you could take advantage of it at 2.5 up until about mid-November, and then they switched it to 3.5, and then he just started hitting 3.5 consistently. It was incredible, but it seems now that Rust is back, Raquel's back, Gensel's been a little bit more consistent with his shots. It seems like Crosby's kind of stepped away, so that I'm going to be kind of fading his shots on goal for a while.
Yeah, agreed. Next game up, we have Buffalo traveling to Montreal here. Montreal, the home dog, plus 110. Sabres are minus 130, which is a little bit interesting. Sabres have struggled on the road here, 7-10-3. Well, Montreal's kind of struggled at home as well, 7-9-2. Montreal has won the 2 previous matchups against the Sabres this season, and they just took down Dallas on Tuesday, 4-3 to stop a 3-game skid here. Buffalo, it's going to be their first game back from that little break here after New Year's. So interesting to see how they look. They are 4-5-1 in their last 10, but just kind of summing up their season, no consistency whatsoever for this team at all. You really don't know what product they're going to put on the ice. So certainly an interesting team to try to bet on and even watch in general here. Franco, I'll start with you. Any looks in this game?
Or be a fan of?
Oh, God, yeah.
I feel bad, man. I mean,
fill in the blank. Yeah.
We were kind of excited about this team, and it's like it
So
just seems like it hasn't worked out for Thompson. Kind of like down year, I guess you would say, to start. Obviously, injuries have been a struggle, but I don't know. But a bunch of the guys just haven't been what we thought they were going to be this year compared to what they were last year. So,
he did just have him and his wife did have a kid, so that could be a maybe bump here. So
that's
just a heads up on that one.
Yeah.
So him and his wife did have a kid. He was out versus Boston for personal reasons, and then because his wife was in labor. So certainly an angle, I guess, if you want to call it that.
Oh yeah.
I mean, it seems to always hit. It always seems to hit. I don't know what it is, So I don't mind that. I guess 5 goals in 8 games versus them in the last 3 years. So it's not like he has a bad history against them. I mean, I think the main thing if you're going to go against Montreal is you want to hope it's not Montembeault in that. I feel like he's been pretty damn good. He shut down Dallas for 2 periods and a little extra last night, and then Dallas finally broke through. But they were frustrated, man. I mean,
Yeah.
Pavelski took a stupid penalty after a great opportunity where he got robbed by Montembeault. So they looked frustrated. They had a ton of chances, finally broke through. But yeah, I'd be more inclined to look at Buffalo props if it's Allen and net. We'll see, I guess. Obviously, Dahlin shots is something you're going to look at. I would assume you guys are probably going to continue riding him. I don't mind coming back to him. Obviously, there's probably not going to be very good value on it. I would assume it's going to be like a -160, -180 for 2.5. So I don't know if they bump him to 3.5 yet. But somebody who stuck out, though, was Skinner, man. I mean, he's got against them 17 points in 9 games, 9 goals, 8 assists, 4 shots a game average against them. So kind of picking up as well. Goal and assists his last 3 games, and averaging almost 4 shots on goal a game. So I don't mind looking at him. Maybe you go for 2 points for him, or maybe split a unit between his goal and his assist prop or something like that. Try to get a little value. I'm sure his point prop will be like -140, -150 or something like that. And then on Montreal side, I'm going to go to Caulfield. I know his history is not great against Buffalo, but 3 goals in 3 games. I think like he's the type of guy, I think, that when he's hot, like you just ride him, because he just finds spaces on the ice, and he just rips one. He had a great goal against Dallas last night after being kind of silenced to start the game. So I don't mind that. I think Montreal is going to score some goals in this game. I don't mind the over probably. And I'd probably lean Montreal, to be honest.
Yeah. Betzky, any looks from you here?
Tage shots on goal, even without knowing the baby news, had my interest, because Montreal's gotten a little bit tighter on shots, but they're historically on the season, they're pretty bad against centers, and it seems like Tage is realizing he's trying to make up a little bit for lost time at the beginning of the season. I think he was struggling with probably a nagging injury. He was out for a while, and his shots were just extremely inconsistent, especially his volume. And now we are starting to finally see his volume kind of return to what we're used to, where it's, 8+ attempts per game. So that's definitely going to be something I look at. I'm not going to be too worried about history with him, because he's such a high volume shooter to begin with. So
I'll get to history in a second.
Oh, is it great?
It's not bad.
Beautiful. Skinner was another one I was looking at too. He's over a point per game against Montreal in his career, even though he does have one game here that he had 5 points in. But like you said, Franco, that could be a nice spot for a multi-point game for him. He hasn't had one against Montreal in the last 4, but I think that's where you're going to start to find a lot of extra value with some of these players, is if you have a book that allows you to get alt points, or he's set at 1.5, it may be worth the look. But it seems like Buffalo's kind of transitioning back to having more of a dominant top line that becomes a little bit more reliable. Skinner's really been the only guy in Dahlin to ride for them this season. Montreal's been tough to find props for, so maybe Mike Matheson.
Yeah, that was the only one I kind of had circled here of Matheson. Hit for point, at least hitting 4 of his last 5, and then 2 of his last 3 versus Buffalo here. Obviously, Caulfield, 4 of his last 5, and even Suzuki too has started to pick up 4 of his last 5 as well. The other guys, like you said, you mentioned Skinner and then Dahlin as well. Thompson too, in terms of history, is hitting 3 of his last 4. So in his last game, for shots over 3.5. So he missed his last game. He had 2 shots on goal and 4 attempts. If you go back to the next 3 games after that, he had 12 attempts, 13 attempts, and 12 attempts, recording 8 shots on goal, 8 shots on goal, and then 5.
So do we ladder him tomorrow with the baby news as well?
Thompson could be the ladder spot tomorrow for sure.
Yeah, I like that.
I'm trying to look at it in terms of Montreal has given up the 6th most shots on goal to center in the last 10 games as well.
That's
okay. They're like 29th over the last 10 games overall, but I feel like they play way tighter on the road. Let me double check that. Yeah,
That'd be
gosh.
interesting.
At home in their last 10, they allow the 5th most shots against and 29th least on the road. So it's definitely a tale of two teams right now with Montreal. And I know you just mentioned that you're kind of leaning Montreal on the sides here, but Buffalo lost the last 2. We got a Tage baby.
Yeah, that might be the bump that they need.
Montreal
right?
coming back after a successful road trip, especially after that big Dallas win.
Yeah. But here's the thing, right? So like Buffalo's off the long layoff, right? So like, are they going to be stagnant? And Montreal's going to like Montreal's been productive offensively. I feel like the last few games. So
yeah,
I feel like they're building a little bit of momentum and confidence offensively, and we could get that really flat early start for Buffalo. So
the Sabres being minus 130 favorites, though, is interesting as well. If anything, I had this game, maybe them around kind of a pick 'em, or if at least minus 120. But minus 130 is pretty heavy for the Sabres, given their inconsistency as of late, too, and already dropping 2 to this team. So it's an interesting one. But yeah, Tage ladder seems to be the consensus on this game, at least.
I like it.
All right, next game up, we have Columbus at Philly here. Philly has won the 2 previous matchups this season. Columbus coming off a 4-1 loss to Boston on Tuesday. Both teams in a little bit of a skid. Philly was hot there for a second. Columbus 1-5 in their last 6, and Philly 1-5 in their last 6 as well here. I have a few props circled here in terms of this one, but I'll start with you here, Franco, again. Philly's your team. Any guys you're kind of looking at here to back?
Well, first of all, I mean, it's a tough road trip doing the Western.
Very much, yep.
Kind of the stretch. So I think they took the one that was the most surprising of all of them was Vancouver. So I think winning that Vancouver game almost like voids out the other losses. Edmonton's been so freaking hot. Like they didn't stand a chance in that game. So I don't know. It's not, I wouldn't say it's a successful road trip, but like it almost feels like it in a weird way.
And did they straddle the break? Like, was half of that road trip before Christmas and the second half after?
I would have to look. I feel like it was because it went over a decent length. But I mean, so they finished 2-0 against Vancouver. I mean, which is pretty freaking impressive this season. So not that I think the Flyers are that great or anything still. I mean, but they've surprised me this year. I'll be honest with you there. I was higher on them than everybody else here, I think, but not this high. So as far as props go, I think there's 2 guys that I'm really looking at here to target. Atkinson's going to be the guy I'm going to be looking at on the Flyers side. So he's been kind of cold. Well, not even kind of cold. 21 game goalless streak. Let's put it that way. So that's pretty brutal for a guy of his caliber. I mean, he's not like the best goal scorer ever or anything like that, but he is a shooter. He is a sniper. And for him to go this many games without a goal, I was watching one of the games and even the commentator was talking about how he just feels like he's snake bitten right now. So because of that, it seems like he's kind of picked up his shot production again over the last few games. Seemed like he cooled off for a little stretch there, but 3, 7, 2, and 4 on that road trip. He's 1-1 against Columbus on hitting the over 2.5 shots. So I tend to lean him at home for shots. So hopefully his price is pretty decent here. I think against his former team, he should be firing. Don't mind maybe going for a goal prop if it's like a nice number. He did score against them first game of the season this year. So I could see him having a little bit of extra juice here going against his former team. And then on the other side, it's always Johnny Gaudreau when you're talking about a guy coming back to the area. He's from the area, close to Philly. At least he's from Jersey, but South Jersey is pretty much Philly when talk about Jersey. So yeah, I mean, against Philly in his career, 8 points in 8 games, averaging over 4 shots a game against them. I know he has missed in a couple of those games, but I don't mind looking at him. I know his shot prop has been pretty horrible this year in general. His point prop has been bettable because he's just not been the Johnny Gaudreau we're used to seeing. So I think you're going to have value here, given the matchup, given the history, and his extra incentive to play in front of his friends and family who I'm sure will be in attendance for the game. So I like those two angles here.
Yeah. Betzky, any plays for you here?
You kind of covered them, to be honest. Columbus is really tricky right now, and without Werenski, it's gotten even worse. I mean, the depth scorers like Fantilli and even Marchenko and Chinkov always look fairly decent or tempting, but it's just really hard to kind of figure out when those dominoes will fall in place. And then against a team like Philly, always was going to worry me. All that being said, Philly's coming off a long road trip. They could be a little sluggish at home. I wonder if this is a nice spot to maybe take a Columbus money line, as scary as that is. I don't know if I can pull the trigger on that, but
I don't mind.
somebody that
Plus
has bigger
150,
cojones than me. What?
What about their team total or something like that? That way you don't have to worry about their money line.
Yeah, because
maybe.
if they win, it's not going to be a 2-1 win. It's my guess.
Yeah, no, I agree. You mentioned Fantilli Point, obviously hitting 6 of his last 8, so he's been pretty solid. Even Danforth too for a point, over in 4 of his last 5 here.
Nice.
Those are kind of the only 2 targets I had on the Columbus side. In terms of Philly, Konechny has been so good as of late. 8 of his last 10 overall, and then 8 of his last 10 versus Columbus as well in terms of a point. So he's kind of the guy I like there. And then Couturier over 2.5 shots on goal. He's hitting 4 of his last 6. So those are kind of the only angles I have in this one here. Any other plays? Franco, Bobby Brink, 3 of his last 5 he's hit. He hit for point. He hit in his last game versus Columbus here. Any thoughts on him?
Yeah, I don't mind it. He's playing on that line with Tippett and Frost. So feel like he's been pretty productive. So far this year. Looks decent as far as being a prospect for them, and he's getting time on ice. I mean, averaging about 17 minutes a game the last 3 games. So I don't mind it. He had a goal pretty recently as well. So yeah, I think like the hardest thing with this Philly team is like finding that guy that's going to score on a given night. I mean, Konechny's been pretty good as far as that, but everybody else, it's kind of like flip a coin, like what line is going to be productive on a given night, right? Like there's always value. Like Farabee's always bettable. Couturier is usually bettable as well. And it's like you bet them and then it's the other line that's productive, or it's like Ryan Poehling with 2 goals for some reason, or Garnet Hathaway with 2 goals. And it's just like, what the hell, man? So I've struggled with that. I think Konechny is really the only like trustworthy like point or goal prop type player, and then anything else you're going to be just flipping a coin. It's weird to say that the Flyers have been deep with scoring, but that's what it's felt like this year.
Yeah, that makes sense. Next game up here, we have Colorado traveling to Dallas here. Dallas is the home favorite, minus 125. On the money line, the over-under is set at 6.5 here. These teams did play once earlier this season here. Colorado took down Dallas 6-3. They're also on a 3-game win streak here, 7-2 in 1 of their last 10. Dallas, as we mentioned before, coming off that loss to Montreal, but they've been good kind of in the last 10, 7-2 and 1 as well here. Colorado's really struggled on the road here. When you look at their splits, 8-7-3 away from home, 16-4-0 at home. So complete kind of opposite ends of the spectrum here. Dallas has been pretty solid at home here, 12-6-1 on the road, pretty similar, 10-4-3 here. Few decent targets, but I mean, we were talking about this before the show here. Not as many targets as we've had the past few years for this Colorado team here at Betzky. Any guys that you're kind of looking at, or are you kind of pretty much off this whole Colorado team, at least for now?
I mean, McCarr's been solid and it's been great all season for shots, so I wouldn't shy away from him. And Nichushkin's kind of come and gone too. I feel like he's kind of due to get going again. He had a really great hot streak right when Lehkonen went out and he got promoted to the top line. I think they're still kind of shifting things around. Like I want to say like Drouin's been on up there too. But let me double check. But Makar
last game, Drouin and Rantanen with McKinnon.
Yeah, so I would look out for that. If Nichushkin's on the top line, I don't really try to play him. I don't know what you would think you would almost like have less shot attempts because Rantanen and McKinnon would be taking some too, but he obviously gets the puck on his stick and prime opportunities a lot more playing with them too. So McKinnon had a big game against the Islanders, and I know they're really leaky against shots, but he is another one where we mentioned it at the beginning before we started recording. It's been a shame that we can't use him. Like last season, the last 2 seasons, he was like 70% plus at home at 4.5. He was always a great ladder target against certain teams. I'm going to keep my eye on him. I'm not going to play him tomorrow. I'm going to keep my eye on him. And if he has another game of really good volume and hits his target or his shots on goal line again, he may be one to start jumping on pretty soon here. Otherwise, I think this is going to be a Dallas show. Like you mentioned, Colorado is struggling on the road. Dallas just lost to a team that they probably felt like they shouldn't have lost to. This is one of those prime times for a bounce back. So I really like Dallas's side here. We got division rivals, quite possibly. I mean, not even quite possibly. These are the 2 best in the Central facing off. I think this is one of those areas that we're going to see a little bit more up and down the lineup. That Sagan Duchesne line's been a little bit quieter, and we're quiet the other night. The Wyatt Johnston and Jamie Benn line really produced, and then we got a little bit more of all the kind of star line during the empty net against Montreal. I feel like this is a prime opportunity for that second line to kind of jump back and start producing again, especially with Duchesne being an ex-Avalanche. So you've heard me say it before. You're going to hear me say it again. Give me Duchesne point tomorrow.
Yeah. Any thoughts on this over, kind of given the goaltender situation for Dallas here? I mean, obviously Scott Wedgwood has played the last 5 here, and he's allowed multiple goals in 4 of those, and 2 of his last 3 has allowed 4 here. Colorado could put the puck in the net. So
Gorgiev's been awful too.
Yep.
He's much better at home. That whole team's better at home. I got to go to the Yotes game last week or the other week when it was they were down 0-4 and came back and won in overtime. Gorgiev was not happy. So
that was funny, man. That him slamming the stick against the boards.
Oh, it's great.
Yeah. All right, Franco. Any plays in this one here for you?
Yeah, I like that over, like you said. When I was reviewing everything here, it just seems like just about everybody is like point per game. Almost everybody feels like it. So look for your value as far as the lines go tomorrow for point props and stuff like that. I really like Nishushkin on the Av side as far as probably goal prop, shot prop, assist prop, whatever you want to do. Kind of, obviously he was a former star, so he's got a little extra juice there, and he's been hot recently. 3 goals, 2 assists in his last 3, averaging 3 shots per game as well, and historically pretty decent against them as well. So I don't mind. Just depends on what the lines are going to be tomorrow, but going there. Makar assist looks pretty good as well on the Av side. Just again, depending on the price. I know he's usually like minus 160 for an assist or something ridiculous. So probably not bettable straight, but decent piece. But yeah, I mean, the more I looked at it, seems like the Dallas players are even better as far as their points per game against Colorado and history and stuff like that. So lean Dallas, kind of like you said, Betzky. Off that Montreal loss, they were frustrated, man. I mean, those first 2 periods, you can see it, just visible frustration on them. And I think against Georgiev, it's going to be kind of like the cure. I can't believe I'm saying that Montembeau is better than Georgiev, but here we are in this wonderful year of 2024. But yeah, I mean, Marchment point looks great. Robertson assist looks pretty good. I think you can find some value there. Obviously, we always think of Robertson as the goal guy, at least last year. But 4 assists in his last 3, 7 and 8 against Colorado overall. I mean, it's kind of like pick your guy for Dallas, honestly. Duchesne, Pavelski look good as well. For goals, even, honestly. 8 goals in 8 games for Pavelski, 6 and 7 for Duchesne versus Colorado. So all these guys look great. I think the main thing tomorrow is just going to be, let's see where the books set these lines at. If you're getting Pavelski at like minus 135 for a point, I'll take that all day. Duchesne minus 135. Those are usually what we're seeing in against better teams. When they're playing a team like Montreal, they're going to be like minus 150. So, and Marchment would be like the more discounted guy. I think he'll be plus money. So, take them all, but I think I lean Dallas money line too.
Yeah. I mean, Jason Robertson, obviously to start the season, his shots on goal last year was kind of what most people targeted, and he's had a slow start to the season for sure, but he's been firing as of late here, and there's been some decent value. Find him at 3.5 at plus money, which I don't think you could even come close to last year. I think he was around that minus 150, minus 140 mark for a long time. The other guys that I kind of have targeted here are Wyatt Johnston. 4 of his last 6, he eclipsed that over 2.5 shots on goal mark. Same thing with Hintz there. Taves too, even for Colorado's side, points has been automatic, 7 of his last 8. And he's not just the assist guy anymore. He's put a few pucks in the back of the net too. His point, I think, last night was around minus 110 to even money. So there's some value on that for sure as well, especially with Wedgwood and net. And then, like you said before, Nichushkin, great history here. 3 of his last 4, he recorded a point against them. Next game up here, we got Tampa Bay at Minnesota here. Tampa Bay minus 130 on the money line. Minnesota plus 110. Over under set at 6.5 here. Tampa Bay losers of 3 of their last 4 here, coming off a loss to Winnipeg. Minnesota also kind of reeling as of late, but obviously due to a bunch of key injuries that they've faced. They've now lost 3 straight. Coming off that, before that, they won 4 straight actually. So clearly that Kaprizov, the Gustafsson injuries are impacting them significantly.
Zuccarello
too. Yep. I mean, this whole team too is just kind of fallen off the wagon the past few games after they were just red hot before. Few guys to target here in terms of their side. Eriksson Ek over 3.5 shots on goal has been great, hitting 5 of his last 6. And he's got some great history against Tampa Bay too. He's covered that mark in 4 of his last 4 games against them as well. And then the only other guy I had for the Minnesota side was Ryan Hartman. Point, shots on goal, he was great last year. This year, not so much, but points been good. He's hitting 4 of his last 6 and 2 of his last 3 versus Tampa Bay. So those are kind of the Minnesota angles I have. If you really want to dive in there, Eriksson Ek has kind of stepped up given all the injuries. So he's been kind of the main guy to target. But I'll throw it to you here, Betzky. And he plays in Tampa Bay, Minnesota.
Yeah, I mean, you covered the Minnesota side pretty well. If you have like a DFS sports book and you can get time on ice, Brock Faber's been fantastic on that. I know he missed it like twice after Spurgeon came back. But he rebounded last game and just ate up minutes. I kind of am hoping to see Eriksson Ek too, because I have to imagine his minutes and time on ice have been skyrocketing with all the injuries. So that's something to kind of keep your eye out on. Otherwise, I'm probably going to lean on Tampa here. I mean, I'll keep betting against Minnesota with all these injuries. I don't see them necessarily recovering right now, and this is kind of the perfect storm for another team to beat down on them because Tampa's wanting to get out of their own losing streak. So I don't know. Give me the healthy team. I know they kind of been splitting up. They don't have the stacked line on Tampa anymore of Point, Kucherov, Stammer. I usually feel like this kind of opens up shots for Stamkos the most, but yeah, otherwise, I don't know. I'm not crazy about the props on either side of here because Tampa, you really kind of have to just take the big names. Another one that does stand out though is Hedman has been fantastic lately as far as points go. Yeah. So if you think that this is going to be a higher scoring game or even Tampa being able to get at least 3. There's probably a good chance that Hedman can get involved, especially since Minnesota's missing 3 key players. So, yeah, that's probably my best bet on this would be Hedman assist or Hedman point. Maybe even Hagel, seeing him on the top line again. He's been a little bit better on the road. He's been kind of cooling down a little bit lately, but Yeah, it's a weird
game.
Two teams that were very reliable that have kind of shifted. I mean, these were two teams where I felt like last season it's like, okay, Kaprizov shots, Zuccarello assist, Eriksson Ek if he's at home shots, and then you could close that book and then turn whoever they're playing. And then Tampa was always like, even this season, Kucherov shots, point shots at home, and then Stamkos if you're feeling spicy, and you could close the book there. But
yeah, I mean, you mentioned point shots. Yeah, he's hitting 4 of his last 4 versus Minnesota and 4 of his last 6 overall. So could be another look for that. But
I really only trust him at home. But
it's true. Yeah, it's a fair point. Franco, any looks for you here?
Well, that's the whole thing with Tampa, right? Home and away it's like a whole different world, right? 7-11-2 on the road. I looked a little deeper though. Minnesota 7-2 in their last 9 against Tampa. And that includes Tampa going 0-5 in Minnesota over that stretch. Now we're going back to 2018, but I mean, Tampa's been a powerhouse that whole time.
Yeah.
So, I wouldn't say that Minnesota has over that, like in 2018, 2019, Minnesota wasn't that good back then, at least as far as my memory serves. Maybe I'm misremembering. But yeah, I mean, it's kind of crazy to me to see that. And don't forget, I don't know if Sergachev is going to play or not, but I know Tampa rolled out 5 defensemen in that game against Winnipeg last night because they were missing Chernak and Sergachev. So if that's the case again, I almost kind of want to back Minnesota here. And I know it's crazy with the guys they're missing. And maybe it's just a draw or like or an under type of game. Because I mean, you're missing like these key players on both sides, and instead of playing an open type of game, I could see it being more of a like standoffish type of cover your butts and try to get out of there with a point and see what happens in overtime type of game. Where it's 2-2 in the third and both teams are content to take a 1 point and get the hell out of there. So.
Yeah, the over-under here is interesting here because Tampa Bay has been allowing a decent amount of goals as of late, not scoring a ton. And Minnesota's kind of in the same boat here. Vasilevsky is kind of reeling as of late, 3-5-3 in his last 3 games in terms of goals against here. Fleury 2 and 3, but both teams giving up a ton of goals, not scoring a ton. The total, obviously, I'm going to stay away from this, but it's certainly one of the more interesting ones, especially listed at 6.5, and it's juiced the over here too, -118. So interesting look. Any thoughts on the over or total?
Well, I mean, I think getting Spurgeon is back, right? They're just without Brodin now, so I think that's a boost in a way. I know losing Brodin isn't ideal either, but I still think you're talking about Minnesota at home. Fleury isn't that bad. I know he's not who he was, back in the day, and he hasn't been that great this year in general. But I think this is kind of like his close to his farewell tour at this point. So he's still got something to play for, and I think them at home, they're going to want to kind of shut the door and play tight. I think the main issue, if you're looking at Minnesota, is their penalty kill is pretty horrendous, and Tampa's power play is really good. So I do really like that Hedman point. If that's a bettable number tomorrow, I think that might be probably the best way to go here.
Yeah, agreed. Next game up, we have the Islanders traveling to Arizona here. The Islanders are -115 favorites in this one, over under set at 6 here. The Islanders have just struggled on the road this season, going 7-6-4. They've been great at home here. They did defeat the Yotes earlier this season, 1-0 here, but the Islanders also kind of on a skid here, losing 3 of their last 4. It's the third game of a 4-game road trip that was kind of split that break too. So that's another thing to watch out for. Arizona, 6-2 in their last 8, I believe, too. And they're on a homestand for quite a bit after kind of traveling around earlier this season, which they've been pretty solid at home, 12-6, I believe. So interesting game. There's also a few question marks here. Zucker suspended. How long? I mean, that was a brutal hit. The other night too, Varlamov taken out in the first period of the other game for injuries. So is Sorokin going to get the nod? But he's been awful as of late here too. So there's a bunch of question marks heading into this game here. I'll throw it to you here, Betzky. Any plays in this one?
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting one. Normally I would lean Islanders for a side here, but it's are very different at home, and I didn't realize Varlamov is probably not going to play. So I think I'll lean Arizona here.
Yeah.
They just don't always match up well against these like bigger teams that can really force you to play the way they find success. We're a more skilled team, but we don't quite have that level of skill where we can just roll past teams that are trying to force you to play a slower, heavier game. So these are always tough matchups. Machalli has been fantastic though on that second line with Krause. So either of their points, if you can get those, then those are bettable as straights. And honestly, I mean, if Machalli is starting to get more juiced up, I'm almost fine going with Krause, because if Machalli gets a point, Krause usually does as well. Kerfoot's been really good playing on that top line. He was our only goal scorer last night against Florida. And that top line really needs to start showing their true colors again, because Keller's been he's been cooling off. I know he was great against Anaheim, but he always is great against Anaheim. Schmaltz is really starting to float a little bit here. This could be a moment where they need to snap back out of it and really start helping produce. But usually their points aren't necessarily bettable, but could be all right parlay pieces here. This game kind of feels like an under to me.
Yeah, so there's a bunch of line. This is the game that's had the most line movement in terms of the total opened at 6, now dropped to 5.5 here too. And Arizona opened at plus 105, and the line shift 15 cents, so it's now a pick 'em. Everyone's on Arizona. It looks like the other guy too, Dursey, over 1.5 shots on goal here. He's hitting 6 of his last 6 and 3 of his last 3 versus the Islanders, who are now one of the more popular shots on goal targets. So, Franco, any looks from you here?
I think that line movement probably has to do with Ingram getting confirmed in net for Arizona, I would say. I mean, as much as we kind of went into the season thinking Vejmelka was the guy here, it seems like it's kind of shifted over the course of the season. Ingram's been the better goalie, I would say. So I think that's why you're seeing that shift to the under and the shift to the Arizona money line. I gotta feel like they bounced back after only scoring 1 against Florida the other night too.
Yeah, me too.
They've been so good at home. And the Islanders aren't as good on the road. I think a lot of their strength is in their abilities to at home create the matchups that they want on the ice. You know, they have very good defensive lines, so to speak. So I think it's imperative for Arizona to find the right matchup for Keller and Schmaltz line, get them going, pick the line they want to go against for the Islanders and get some production out of them. I think that's the main key for them to win this game. But as far as props go, I'm looking at Horvat for Islanders props. He's pretty damn good against Arizona historically. 5 goals in 5 games against them, 7 total points, averaging about 3 shots a game. So decent over his last few games, 2 assists in his last 3. So not like he's tearing it up or anything like that, but don't mind the history there. Brock Nelson looks pretty decent as well, but he's kind of burned me in the past. So I don't mind his shots. I guess that would probably be where I would go as opposed to his point prop, since he's been kind of up and down. I feel like the Islanders in general, their offense has been kind of like weird, like where you're going to get it from. So and then you mentioned Dursey's shot, but I like Dursey point as well. 4 points in his last 3. And I do think Machalli will be bettable. I mean, he was minus 115 yesterday, and he didn't record a point, so I don't see it moving too much. Like I know that the matchup historically is an under, so you might even be getting even money there, especially with the line move back down to 5.5. So I love Michelli Point. I'm going to go right back to him there.
Yeah, I like that as well. Last game up on the slate here, we have Florida at Vegas here. Florida minus 115 on the money line. Vegas minus 105. Over under set at 6 here. Minus 125 to the over here. These teams did play once this year. Florida got their revenge, defeating Vegas 4-2 in this one. Florida's also been red hot this as of late. Excuse me. They've won 5 straight here. Vegas kind of reeling. Lost 5 of their last 6, but the majority of that was on the road, which they've kind of struggled with this year. They're much better at home, 13-3-2 at home. Bobrovsky kind of returning to form for this Florida team after he struggled to start the season here. Vegas, the goalie combination that Vegas has now that Hill is out has been bad this year. Hill slated to return this month, but they desperately need him back in terms of the net. So I'll start with you here, Franco. Any looks in Florida, Vegas?
Yeah, I know you said the goalie struggles, and they have been real so far this year for Vegas since Hill's gone out. But I kind of, at least on the surface here, it feels like an under to me. With as good as Bobrovsky's been playing, I don't see a ton of production from Vegas's offense recently as well. So it's not ideal for them, even though they're better at home. So I could see Florida keeping Vegas, under 3 or less goals. So it just comes down to Vegas being able to shut the door as well. So I could see us being like a 3-2 game and staying under. Don't really want to pick a side. But I mean, a ton of Florida props stick out to me, to be honest. So maybe that's where you go. Kachuk's been kind of heating up. Barkow's been great all year.
Especially on the
both
road.
Of those lines. And just both of those lines have been awesome. And you look at their production recently, and Reinhart and Verhaeghe have just been red hot with scoring as well. And they have decent numbers against them historically. So again, like, just look for the value, I'd say, but I don't want to go real heavy on the props, just because, like I said, I think, like, worst case you're looking here is a 4-2 game, and that's likely going to be an under. So I don't want to go too heavy on props here.
Yeah. Betzky, any looks for you?
Reinhardt's been really
Great.
fantastic lately too. Yeah, so I may go for him on the shot side of things. Maybe even Barkov on top of it. It seems like they've are kind of turning more into the super cats that we saw last season, and Maurice has got them just shooting and really clicking. The only person that's been kind of lacking on it is Bennett and Tkachuk, or both of those. I guess the defense too, but it seems like it's all kind of picking up a little bit right now, and it seems like that's a big aspect of their ability to control the puck is just fire it on net. Hopefully the goalie stops it. Then we get to start up again in their zone. A player that stands out on the Vegas side is Marchessault, who used to be a Panther and got moved to Vegas during expansion draft. He does not have a point in the last 5 against the Panthers. I feel like that's got to turn, because he had a point or more in 5 of the last 6 before the 5 pointless streak.
That's why I thought the last game they played, and he didn't come up with one. So
yeah.
But I get you. I get you.
At some point, it's got to give. It's got to give.
He's also hitting each of his last 3 at home.
Yep, and his shots have been picking up again. I think he's been a little bit better for shots on the road as far as splits go, but against his old team that he doesn't have a point against in those 5 games, and out of those 5 games he doesn't have a point. He hit his shots prop in 4 of those, so at least the 2.5 line. May even be one where, I mean, Florida's been so tough on shots that I don't know if you want to ladder it, but he has had 4 and 6 shots against them 3 out of those last 5 games, and he has some other games where he's kind of soared past the 2.5 line. That Mark Stone line's been fantastic with Jack Eichel. Both of their points are so juiced now that I turn right towards Barbashev, who is the third winger or third person on that line, the left winger. You can usually get his point at even money to plus money. It's kind of been a little bit of a coin toss of whether or not he gets it, but I think he has a point in 7 of his last 10, if I remember correctly, or maybe 6 of his last 10 now that they got shut out at the Winter Classic. But I think this is going to be a spot where Vegas can kind of try to capitalize on having the home ice advantage, and really needing to turn it around and playing a team that's on a road trip, and then maybe taking that motivation of getting shut out on the big stage as their motivator.
Yeah, you mentioned Barbashev too. 7 of his last 10 he's hit versus Florida in terms of a point, and he's hit in each of his last 5 games at home. So
nice.
Not a bad look there at all. All right. You guys want to shout out your socials one last time here?
Yeah, Franco the Banker on Twitter.
Gretzky Betzky's on Twitter and part of the Parlay Science community.
Awesome. As always, you can find me on Twitter at Gator Betting and weekly articles on the Odds Breakers. We appreciate everyone for listening. This has been another episode of Expected Bets.